Zeppelin, wake up, wake up!
No, I have many important things to do. Coffee and work, and more coffee.
They're making a new Harry Potter book.
No, J.K. ended it. The Dark Lord is dead, Harry Potter wins, end of story. Everyone dies, basically. No more magic.
No, Zeppelin, it's set 19 years later, and Harry's son doesn't want to be his son. It's a play. That changes everything.
Then I know what I must do. I must do a walkthrough with the Cursed Child. Or, just review it. Honestly, of all the days to film my comeback video, and it's like the hottest day of the year. So yeah, apologies if it looks like I'm, melting. Is it surprising that we have another Harry Potter story in front of us? I mean, really, it's such a huge, vivid, life-changing franchise for so many people. I'm almost amazed it's taken them this long to make a new one. After all, it's been 5 years since we had the last film, and there's been nothing. Well, apart from the studio tour, and the film coming out later this year. Oh, and all the stuff on Pottermore all the time. Obviously at this point I should say spoilers ahead, but really, if you've clicked on this video about the new Harry Potter book, play, thing, whatever it is, and you don't want to know what happens, then really you're being incredibly optimistic. The Cursed Child is set 19 years after the Battle of Hogwarts and Deathly Hallows, and it starts with that lovely scene at the end of the last story where Harry's son Albus confides in his father, "Oh, I'm worried that I'll end up in Slytherin." And then the middle-aged boy who lived responds with passionate praise about the 2 headmasters that his son is named after, and everything seems hunky-dory. But then we get to the Cursed Child and, well, things aren't quite as idyllic as we thought they were. They're actually rather complicated, to put it politely. Unsurprisingly, one of the biggest draws, at least for me, was Harry after all these years. What would adult life be like for the boy who lived? Even with a high-profile job at the Ministry, would he be happy? I mean, by all accounts, he's earned the right to do whatever he likes now. Put his feet up, relax, He saved the world a few times when he was a kid. Give him a break. Then you have Albus Severus, the Cursed Child in question, who ends up at Hogwarts with all the pressure of being Harry Potter's son on his shoulders, and after all that, he ends up in Slytherin. Oh, major plot twist! I do have some issues though with Albus being in Slytherin. Isn't it a bit unusual that his whole family, including his siblings, are in Gryffindor, and yet for some reason he's in the complete opposite house? I mean, Ron even said there wasn't a Weasley that wasn't in Gryffindor, and Ginny's a Weasley, so by blood, surely he should be in Gryffindor. Think about it, it isn't a small change, it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum. After all, Slytherin is the house for all the UK boys and girls, all the witches and wizards who are basically evil. You'd think it'd be the perfect way for the Ministry to know who to keep an eye on. Although, I will admit, Harry was almost put in Slytherin, but the difference is, he asked not to be put in Slytherin, which begs the question, did Albus ask to be put in Slytherin? In any case, it does make a good plot twist, so fair enough. What I did like was the strength of the bond between Albus and his best friend Scorpius. It was even stronger than Harry and Ron at times. It only felt like it was something more as well. Honestly, there were some scenes where I wouldn't have been surprised if they'd started making out. Then Scorpius asks out Rose and just completely dismisses any other suggestions. Interestingly, to me anyway, it felt like Scorpius was a constant apology for his father Draco. I mean, Draco Malfoy, he can't have been that bad to make this loving and kind son who takes all the flack that comes his way and just shrugs it off. Shakes it off even. He's a wizard Taylor Swift. Then you have plenty of other returning characters, many of which you don't expect, and that then begs the question of nostalgia versus purpose. Is it really necessary to bring them back, or is it because the writers feel like we'd want to see what they're like 2 decades down the line? What's good though is that they've got enough new characters who take prominent roles within this story, so it doesn't feel like it's constantly being overshadowed by familiar faces. And then there's death. Honestly, JK can't write one story without killing off someone. I mean, it's ridiculous. Dare I say it, it's not a major death, which sounds terrible when I say it out loud, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's a bit of a relief that it's not too major a character to get rid of. You might have noticed I'm being very careful here to make sure that I don't completely ruin the plot. Obviously, I've got to spoil a few things here and there to go into detail, but I only want to spoil it slightly. There were, however, a few things that did annoy me about the story. First, there was trying to keep up with the Time Turner, which is such a frustrating device. And then there was the notion that if Ron and Hermione had never met and ended up in love, that Hermione would just become a bitter teacher rather than a minister for magic. Her career would really suffer for it. Okay. Apologies to all teachers, but no, come on. Compare being a teacher to being the overall leader of the wizarding country. I mean, sorry, you can't compare the two. I get it, Ron and Hermione's bond is so strong and they bring out the best in each other, but the notion that she wouldn't feel her potential because of him. I mean, when Ron goes off in a huff during Deathly Hallows, does she just give up, throw in the towel? No, she keeps going, as determined as ever. Honestly, that part of the play was just so ridiculous. Then there's Teddy Lupin, Harry's godson from the previous book, and he's not in it at all. What happened to him? Plus, there was part of me that was disappointed that Ron was just the comic fool for most of the play. It would be nice to see him be the hero for a change. But then again, would we want him any other way? Overall though, I think one of the most important points to consider if you are going to read the script is that you've got to take it for what it is. A script. Nothing else. It's not going to have the language that takes you to the same emotionally charged heights that the novels did. And if you go in there expecting any more, then you're going to be disappointed. I will admit, it is infuriating that they're releasing a new version of the book next year. That feels as like it is cashing in too much. But as the next story of Harry's chapter, A Peaceful Wizarding World Without Voldemort, it makes for interesting reading, and it's hard not to be a little bit curious. And yes, you can argue that this spoils the play by finding out the plot beforehand, but you can also argue the same thing about the books and the films. I never felt like I was missing out by reading the books before them, and personally, having read it now, I'm quite interested to see how they're going to do it all on stage. But for me, it's the same anticipation I had of seeing how each of the movies would interpret the books. You can argue he never went away, but for me this feels like Harry and the Wizarding World are properly back, and I'm now quite excited about Fantastic Beasts. And finally, the last thing I can say is my usual obligatory, sorry it's been so long since the last video, been way too busy with all kinds of things. I've got a new job, moved up to London, as you can probably hear in the background, new place. I mean, life is just, the thing is I just love to do all kinds of things. Trying to fit them all in can be a bit time consuming, but I promise that I will try to make more videos in the future. Let's just see what happens.